Townshend, Wesley Stace.
I ain't seen a sign of my hero.
First question, just to start the ball rolling, The Who, it's all about identity. Who are you? Who I am? What's the story of the book?
I started in a traditional memoir manner, finding out stuff about my grandparents and my great-great-parents and where my family had grown up, and doing that thing of looking into birth certificates and doing that journey. Very interesting thing to do. One fabulous coincidence was that my father's mum and dad lived in Wellock Road in Turnham Green when they were young, before my father was born. Literally one street away from where I went to do my first audition with Roger Daltrey, where he lived in his house there. Literally another 2 steps and you were at John Entwistle's house. So that neighbourhood in Acton, South Acton, was not just where the Who began, but where I began, in a sense.
Right.
And that kind of stuff I started with. But then what actually started to happen is I loved writing about my early days when my dad was in a band. I was a little baby in the band bus and handing out bottles of beer to Scottish brass players. And, hey, Cliff, this boy is a great boy. Because I would give him a fucking beer. Bring him again. And it's interesting. One of the trumpet players was one of the founders of British Alcoholics Anonymous.
Sweet, sweet love. Wanna drown in your sweet, sweet love. I wanna drown in it, drown in it, drown in it, drown in it. I wanna drown in your sweet, sweet love.
One of the fantastic early moments in the book is when you're talking about that kind of hearing that mysterious music. And almost like music of the spheres. Explain that, and then let us know how many times you heard that in your life, and if you still do. The music of the spheres.
No, I was just thinking about where to start, because the first time it happened to me, of course, was when I was very little. I used to hear it all the time, but I didn't know. I used to think I was hearing the birds. I used to wake up in the morning and hear all this tweeting, and I thought it was birds, but I used to hear music all the time when I was a little kid. Or I would think it was my dad rehearsing his clarinet downstairs or whatever it was. But then one day I put it together because my dad's aunt, Trill, my great aunt Trill, was the only person in the family that had a piano. And I used to go and see her, and she was a lovely, eccentric, new age kind of lady. Used to read the tarot and do astrology and all that kind of stuff. And I used to go in and bang at her out of tune piano until I went into a trance. And one day I was banging away at this piano and hearing all this amazing sound, and she was sitting knitting or doing tapestry or something. And I finished, and this big orchestral thing finished, and I kind of turned to her, and she said, "That was really wonderful." And I went, "I know." I chased that sound constantly, and I did hear it often in my work. I would do working on Barbara O'Reilly, in a sense, is an indication of how it could go in my head, but it would be much better what I would hear.
Yeah.
And I fortunately don't get it anymore.
Oh yeah, I wanna drown, I wanna drown. Your sweet, sweet love. Wanna drown in your sweet, sweet love. Wanna drown in your sweet, sweet love. love tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's right. Yeah, sure.
So are we on the air or anything like that?
Every year is the same. I feel it again. I'm a loser. No chance to win.
Also, your art school influence, you know, there's a bit at the beginning of the book when you talk about smashing your guitar like you're doing a sculpture for the audience, like what you're doing is a sculpture. That's got to be an art school influence.
That's
as well,
right,
isn't it?
yeah. I get irritated if that's dismissed. But I have to live with it. You know, it did become a kind of gimmick. You know, it did become something that, and it became something other than I intended. But the whole point of everything that I did on the stage was I wanted to do something so that the audience that was in front of me would find some sense of release, some sense of connection, some sense of purpose, some sense that I could be a part of stimulating, re-stimulating these young men that we performed to who were not willing to do what the older guys were doing. The audience that we played to were young men from between 14 to 17 years old who just would come in desert boots, Levi's, and a T-shirt, and they would have no idea what they were going to do in the future, no idea of what their function would be. And it wasn't that I wanted to give them a job, I just wanted to make them feel that there would be some place for them in the world ahead, because we all felt that there wouldn't be a place.
Where do you get those blue jeans? Faded, that secret so tight. Where do you get that walk oh so lean? Your shoes and your shirts are just right. 'Cause I'm one. Yes, I am. I'm one. And I can see that this is me, and I will be. You'll all see I'm the one.
So you're smashing guitars, you're sculpting guitars. How many of those guitars are you picking up, mending, and playing the next night?
That happened later. I started...
Were they playable again?
No. I started...
But you'd have them and then smash them again?
No.
No. Well, why did you mend them?
I'm an artist. Let me explain. I used Rickenbackers, and I got through about 10 of them. They cost the equivalent in today's money of about $15,000. So by the time I was 19, I was pretty seriously in debt. So I switched to a guitar that was a little bit tougher. I went from playing Rickenbackers, which I could actually break on my hip, which is this fabulous move.
Right.
Do you mind if I do it for you?
Please do.
I just kind of go like that. Boom. Boom. And one day, it just split in two. I've got two bits of guitar. So I moved to a different kind of... I loved Rickenbackers. I love the sound of them. I've still got a few. I love them. They're a fantastic instrument. But I went to something much tougher, and I started to play Fenders, Telecasters and Stratocasters. And they're pretty hard to break. In fact, I can remember the first time I tried to break one. I couldn't do it. And I thought, because I'd been so light with it, I think, not really wanting it to break. I'm so savage and anarchic, and I hope it doesn't really break. This is another $15,000. And in the end realized that I could really, really bang with the Fender Stratocaster, and then pick it up and then continue to play.
Right.
And it would still be in tune.
Right.
And if I did break it, I could put it back together again. In fact, our first set of shows in New York were in '67 at the Murray the K show. And we were doing 4, 5, 6 shows a day sometime, and every show I broke the guitar, and every time I broke it, I had an hour and a half to repair it and put it back together again. I am a luthier.
And was it playable? And
I make musical instruments.
And it was playable?
Yeah.
But surely there's a moment when you break the neck of a guitar where it's not coming back for seconds.
No, not really. No, if you've got enough left, you can spline it in together.
You end up with very short necks.
Literally. No, you take off the. You skim off the fingerboard and you put the neck back together and use very, very fast drying glue. I used to use this powder glue, and that would dry in. Sometimes it wouldn't work, but it. Who cared? We were smashing guitars on the Murray the K show.
Yeah, I'm one. I can see this is me. I will be. You'll all see I'm the one. I'm the one.
Yeah, sure.
So are we on the air or anything like that?
If your child ain't all he should be now, this girl will put him right. I show him what he could be now. Just give me one night. I'm the gypsy, the acid queen. Pay me before we start. I'm the gypsy, I'm guaranteed to tear your soul apart.
And in my book, I tell the story yet again of how, I was one of the few people at Woodstock that didn't get it. And of course, I got it when it worked for The Who so well subsequently, because the movie was so great and the story was so great behind Woodstock. All those people that maybe weren't there that thought they were, and I was there and I thought I wasn't. Quickly tell you a story, because this has happened to me recently. I'm going to France, where my partner Rachel's got a house, and I get to the airport, and all the guys from Elton John's band are getting on a plane. I go and sit in my seat, and a couple of seats away is a black lady, and I couldn't really tell how old she was, but I knew she was something to do with the band. And halfway through the flight, I leaned over and I said, "So, are you working in Elton's band?" And she said, "Yes, I'm a singer." And I said, "Oh, great." I said, "How long have you been working with him?" And she said, "For long enough, he's a hard-working guy." A bit more of the flight passed, and then she turned over and she touched me, and she said, "You and I have been on a stage together." And I said, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "When?" And she said, "I was at Woodstock, and I sang with Sly and the Family Stone." And I went,
Fucking hell, man! Sly and the fucking Family Stone! Shit! Oh, sorry.
They did the best gig you have ever seen in your life. They were just so hot. And what I remember was standing on the side of the stage and thinking, how many more times are they going to play? Gonna get you higher, 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 higher. And of course, Sly was waiting for everybody to wake up. And they did. They woke up, they got out of their sleeping bags, and they stood up and started, you know. And I thought, when we go on, I'm going to do that. And I did it. I did it with, you know, listening to you, I get the music. And at one point, we'd played it so many times, I was actually waiting for the sun to come up. Keith was playing, he's going, Pete, no more, please. No more, stop, stop. Don't do any more. I'm getting bored. Seriously. So funny.
Give us a room and close the door. Leave us for a while. Your boy won't be a boy no more. Young, but not a child. I'm the gypsy, the acid queen. Pay me before we start. I'm the gypsy. I'm guaranteed to break your little heart.
And another incident there that happened was the radical political activist Abby Hoffman coming on just before I was about to play Acid Queen, which was my thing, my piece. It's the song, I am the Acid Queen. And I used to kind of summon up. This is a bit kind of weird, and maybe you'll get this, that maybe you won't, but I would try to imagine that I was female and really pretty amazing, and I was going to get this boy and inject him with stuff, and that was the persona that I was in when I turned to my microphone to sing, and Abby is standing there, and he's saying, "This is a crock of shit. You know, there's all you guys out there pretending everything's about peace and love, and my friend John Sinclair has been incarcerated for one lousy joint." Anyway, however much sympathy I felt with him, I'd started the song, I was already playing the intro, and I'd restrung my guitar, and it had one of these things sticking out, a big thing sticking out, a bit of string about that long. And I get out of the way, and the string cut his neck. It could have cut his artery, but it cut his neck, and he started to bleed. And he went down and stood by the side of the stage, and right the way through the song, he looked at me all the way through. And at the end, I turned to him and I went, "Sorry." And he went, "My work is done now, look at him. He's never been more alive. His head it shakes, his fingers clutch. Watch his body rise. I'm the gypsy, the acid queen. Pay me before I start. I'm the gypsy. I'm guaranteed to break his soul apart." I think that's enough of that.
Yeah, sure.
So are we on the air or anything like that?
Be fighting in the streets with our children at our feet, and the morals that they worship will be gone.
A quick one Tommy, the urge Quadrophenia, Iron Man, the urge to tell a big story with a piece of music that really no one had done, before you in the rock world. You kind of invented that. And then you have a new thing called Floss that you mention at the end of your book. Just tell us something about how you feel about that so important development of your work.
I think because I felt always that what I was doing was writing songs for the audience. And I think because I was a member of the band, I was very conscious that I also had to write songs that the band could play as well as they could play for the audience. That became a craft that I found that was quite constricting. And I had this studio in Wardour Street in an old film editing cutting room. And it was very early days. It was 1966. The Who were still on a roll of hit singles. That's what we were doing. We hadn't broken America. We were on UK TV and going and trying to find shows where girls would scream at us. But they never did. But anyway, that kind of pop star kind of thing that we're doing. And I went and one day and I decided that I wanted to write something, a proper opera, a real opera. So I learned how to orchestrate. I studied orchestrations. I spent six or 7 weeks doing work. I listened to opera. I studied the scores. And I began to write this piece, a story. It was based on a visit that I'd made to Israel just before the conflict with Egypt, the very, very first conflict with Egypt, called Rael. And the story was Israel going to war with Red China. And I got about 14 or 15 pieces of music. And what actually happened was that Kit Lambert came in one day, the Who's manager and our record producer, and said, "What have you got?" And I said, "Well, I haven't got anything."
Right.
And he said, "Well, what are you working on?" And I said, I haven't got anything I'm working on. He said, "What's this stuff over here?" And I said, "That's my opera." And he said, "Pete, you've written an opera. That's jolly good. Well, let's have that then." He took my... This was going to be like a 3-hour Wagnerian, maybe even a 3-year Wagnerian cycle. Israel is at war with Red China. And we got it down to a 6-minute single. But then I went on to do another one. I went on to do one called A Quick One While He's Away, which came about in exactly the same way. We had a hole on an album, we needed to fill it. I'd written 3, 4, 5, 6 songs which were unfinished, and Kit came and said, "We need some 6 songs. No, we need to fill up 7 minutes gap on this album that we've got." And suggested that I string these songs together, and that's how A Quick One happened. It was a natural development to go into Tommy.
The change it had to come. We knew it all along. We were liberated from the foe. That's all. World looks just the same. History ain't changed. The banners all were flown in the last war. Tip my hat to the new Constitution. Take a bow for the new revolution. Smile and grin at the change all around. Pick up my guitar and play just like yesterday. Then I'll get on my knees and I'll pray. We don't get fooled again.
Let me say something about why it worked for me. I suddenly realized with those other little pieces that I'd done that the narrative behind had another function, which is that you tell a story and then you don't finish it. You kind of, but you don't drop the nuclear bomb. You just say, listen, the kid, there's, at the end, for example, at the end of A Quick One While He's Away, this story unfolds. It appears to be a very, very silly story. I analyse it in my book. It's probably my story, I think, as a child. But it ends with forgiveness, just forgiveness. But you don't really know who's forgiving who.
No.
I leave that to you. You decide who you're forgiving. You decide, do you know what I'm saying? So I felt that with this narrative, and it happens in Tommy as well. You get to the end of Tommy and you think, what's happened? He's climbed a mountain, but what happens at the end of Quadrophenia? He goes out to the rock, he sings Love Rain on Me, but then what happens? He's on a fucking rock in the middle of the ocean, you know.
And how about the end of Floss?
The end of Floss is, it will happen at the show. Floss is a Sonne Lumiere music story which happens on a stage in front of you. All the characters on the stage, including all the crew, all the lighting designers, all the lighting gaffers, all the sound men, the people in the band, they're all part of the story.
I tip my hat to the new Constitution, take a bow for the new revolution, smile and grin to change all around, pick up my guitar and play, just like yesterday. Then I'll get on my knees and I'll pray. I'll pray we don't get fooled again.